afternoon and welcome to our first meeting of the year. It's good to be here, 2022, hard to believe, but we are here. Invocation tonight will be given by myself, and respect to the flag will be led by Councilman Kyle Newton. Please rise. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you put upon our community. We ask that in the start of this new year that you keep everyone in our community safe and away from harm. We ask that you protect those who are ill right now with the virus and other symptoms. We ask that you help us with the mental health of our community, our citizens. As always, we ask that you protect our frontline employees, first responders, all those who work in public works that face outward to our community. We ask that you keep them safe and away from harm. We ask that you help this governing board to make wise decisions that are pleasing to you and in the best interests of your children, our citizens. We ask all these things in your name. Amen. I have a couple items before we get into the body of our meeting. And first is a special recognition. We have a retirement. It's always good to have people who are in a position to retire. It's always hard to lose them. And I'm going to ask Chief if he would come down and lead us in this part of the program. Chief Stewart.
Chief. Hey. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Captain Doyle Carpenter, come down. For those of you that don't know, and probably the council members also, Doyle's not only a captain with our department, but he's been a lifelong friend for me. In fact, we've been friends since kindergarten at church. Our lives have kind of merged together at points and times, and he's been very special to me as far like when I transferred and went to detention. He kind of showed me everything I needed to do because he had been there several years before me. Before that, we got to serve as investigators together, also upstairs in the tech division for several years, and you know, it's going to be a hard loss for us moving forward because Doyle knows everything about this detention center so much in and out. So even though he's retiring, we're probably still going to call him on the phone and bug him and send him emails. We kept his email on so we could still keep in touch with him. But Captain Mike Roberson is going to fill his shoes, but he's got some really big shoes to fill. I really am at a loss for words. But we all know when it's time for us to retire, and I know Doyle, we've talked, and he's reached that point in his life. So just because he doesn't work here anymore doesn't mean I won't see him anymore, because we're still going to be real close and in touch. But just present this to you, Doyle, in appreciation for 27 years of loyal and dedicated service to the city of Anderson. This is from the Anderson City Council.
Appreciate it, Chief. Thank you, sir. Enjoy your time.
And now we'll move on. We have a appointment of an interim mayor pro tem, and Ms. McEwen.
Mayor, this is seat 2, which was Councilmember Chapman. He was currently serving as Mayor Pro Tem. So we have an unaspired term for Mayor Pro Tem. And so at this point, before we, and this is something, of course, that we rotate through council based on a list, many of you about appointing one of your fellow council members to fill that unaspired term until the new term takes over. And I believe the new term starts on July the 1st. And so it would be from now until then for this unaspired term. With that, it's certainly y'all's consideration.
Ms. Stewart.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that our longest-serving city council member, Dr. Beatrice Thompson, be appointed as our interim mayor pro tem.
First by Mr. Stewart, a second by Mr. Horban. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an interim mayor pro tem. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. The minutes of our December 13th meeting have been distributed. Are there any questions or additions to those minutes? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve? I have first by Mr. Newton, second by Mr. Jeff Roberts. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Those minutes of December 13th pass unanimously. Now, one item of old business, and that item is to request second reading of Ordinance 22-01 to amend Ordinance 21-19 to include the unexpired term of Seat 2 in the April 5th, 2020 general election. Ms. McEwen.
Mayor, City Council, as you stated in the title, this is an amendment to our election ordinance that was passed on November the 8th, 2021, establishing the April 5th, 2022 election, and it's for the vacancy of Seat 2 following state law shall be filled for the remainder of the term at the next regular election, and this is second reading. Thank you.
We had this and it passed unanimously on the first reading. Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
Have a first by Mr. Horban.
Second.
Second by Mr. Newton. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just for a point of clarification, at our last meeting, I know it was first reading, and I think we did the 1, 3, 5 and at large, but during the first reading, did we include the unexpired term during that first reading as well?
Yeah. Yes.
Sure.
Yep. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have 6 items of new business. First item of new business is request consideration of a contract for Fire Station 2 roof repairs. Ms. McEwen.
So one of our capital replacement for the year regarding the fire stations is Station 2. It's in need of a roof replacement over 2 sections, the actual garage or the bay area, and then the day room, what we call the day room, the living quarters. And so over the garage area now has tar and gravel, and then over the day room is a TPO roof. We received, we sought bids and received 2, one in the amount of $55,175 from Pickens Contracting, and then another one for $78,008 from Turnkey Roofing and Home Improvements. One was also sought from C. Bourne and Company, but we did not receive a reply from that request. With that, in evaluating the bids, there's a little bit of a difference between the materials. With the lower bidder, who we're recommending is Pickens Contracting, and we've had very good experience with them. They do good work in the community. They are recommending the replacement with a TPO roof with and then 24 gauge sheet metal coping with gutter and downspouts as well for that. Workmanship guaranteed for 2 years, and then also a 20-year manufacturing warranty. And we're recommending the contract be awarded to Pickens Contracting for $55,175.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, any comments? How old is that? When was that station built? Any, 66?
I gotta say, the fire department themselves, we have a lot of talented firefighters that are able to do work, and that they recently renovated the bath area, and it's very nice in there. I guess about 5-6 years ago, and so it's of course it's a dated building, but they're keeping it in good shape.
Any other questions, Mr. Roberts?
I'm assuming it's a built-up roof currently, and given its age, there is a likelihood that it has asbestos flashings. Are we prepared for that abatement if that arises?
And actually, in the quote, it did exclude it. That they were going to do asbestos testing, but if there was asbestos, it didn't count that amount in there because it's unqualified amount. But however, you know, that's something that we do day in, day out, and it's usually a small expense. So it's something we'd be able to handle from the capital replacement fund.
Okay, and then there was also a cautionary note about fastening through the existing deck and penetrating potentially conduits or utilities under the deck. So maybe just a brief inspection on our part might save a little trouble there.
That's right. And of course, one of their disclaimers in there as well to cover.
I am familiar with Pickens Roofing. They're a knowledgeable, expert roofing contractor, and I have full confidence in them. So with that, I would recommend their bid of
70,
what's that amount?
55,175.
Yes.
Have first by Mr. Jeff Roberts. Second by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Our second item of new business is request consideration of a change order for the East Market Street parking garage. Ms. McEwen?
So for the East Market Street parking garage, there's 2 elevators by Schindler that were installed in there. We've been through a little bit of a roller coaster with that, but they're installed, they're operational at this point. But as you know, they were in a warehouse in Atlanta, and that warehouse was hit by a tornado. So there was a delay there. Things did work out. We were able to work with Schindler to recover the elevators that were designed specifically for our building and then have them installed. However, during inspection, there's essentially a new code, and there's 2 inspectors in the state for labor licensing. And so the inspector had the opinion, even though our architect, Mamil Patson Smith, has never built one like this on any other open structure. And it was designed, you know, to code at the time, but they were starting to, I guess, what it turned out, more detailed conversation with them, is they wanted to see conditioning or the conditioning of the actual elevator shaft from the top. So what's that doing? That's mitigating the risk of weather impacting the elevator equipment. So we had several discussions with that because, again, the plans have been approved in many other places, and then they're requiring this. The labor and licensing did hold their ground on this, and so a vestibule for both the elevator at the very top on floor 7, which is the amenity deck, need to be built, and so they were. This is a change order requesting the building or the build out of that vestibule for $75,000, and that's Van Winkle Construction doing that. We did go ahead, and at the time, the Van Winkle moved forward and did build it to meet inspection. So, however, this is a change order I need to bring before you.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments?
The price that was quoted by our contractor, Van Winkle, did we have, I guess, our people run those numbers to make sure that they're in line, or because?
Yeah, so our architect, Mamil Patson Smith, does that on any project that we do. We have that, you know, our resident engineer that's on the project to do that, and so they did, and it was in line with cost estimates. It's essentially just a glass box, and it has doors in it, and then, you know, it has some air-conditioned HVAC equipment on both of them, and they're identical. It was actually kind of a nice improvement to it when you go up there, and I think it works out well at the end of the day.
So it's already in place.
It's something that, we did initially think that they moved really quick because inspections were taking place. We were not formally appealing it, but we were appealing it with the state. And then the material needed to go ahead. There was some lead time and needed to be ordered to get these things operational. So we did go ahead and get it in place.
And when you say it's funded by a mix of cash and special obligation bond, you mean cash meaning general fund?
Yeah, we haven't gotten the general fund dollars quite yet. There's still about $450,000 that's outstanding and that we need to pay invoices on, or they haven't come in yet, the invoices. But of course, this was a mix from a $7 million bond to cleaning or finishing out the TIF fund, because we had to actually end the TIF fund, use those funds, which is about $1.5 million, and then the remaining being from the general fund. But we haven't touched those dollars yet.
Any other questions?
Also, we'll add one more thing. We had some hospitality revenue as well into that.
This is the first change order we had, right?
Yeah, we've had one other smaller one, but it was one was like for $11,000, and another one was within my spending authority.
Mayor,
Mr. Harbin, and then Mr. Newton.
I think I was privileged to some of the conversation about state government inspecting an elevator and the thinking behind it. But I think that just sort of some of our discussions about overreach of government, I think that was probably a decent example of it. We did it exactly how we were supposed to do it and got it approved, and then to get a CO, we couldn't get a CO. So I obviously make a motion that we approve this, but it certainly should also be a guidance for us as a council, because we did it exactly like everybody else has one in the state until we build a new one, and you got to do it like this, and so it's sort of crazy, but.
That's exactly what happened. This is, they, looked throughout the state on other examples of this, and they were unconditioned at not having a vestibule at the top like this. Open air other garages is that same way, and multiple new garages, but again, they stuck with this. So.
With that, I'd make a motion.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harbin.
That motion.
I have a second comment.
Obviously, the downtown parking deck's a great amenity. The architecture firm, are they still looking at that right-hand turn as you're traveling southeast on McDuffie? Is that something that still could possibly change to alleviate some of that?
One of the things we're having them do, of course, sometimes it takes some playing around with some of that, and also when you enter from both entrances, the median that's in the middle that kind of separates the in and out. We're getting sketches right now. Actually, they're going to do it for free from Mill Pass and Smith for us to change some of those radius, shorten it up, and so we're looking at several options on that to make it easier coming and going. And it's one of those things that the detail was there. But when you go and you pull full-size vehicles in there, you notice that some positive changes can be made. So we plan on making those changes.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. The third item of new business is request consideration resolution to provide certification as provided by the South Carolina Abandoned Buildings Revitalization Act of 2013 for the building at 120 and 122 East Earl Street in Anderson. Mr. McEwen.
So for this is actually, 120 East Earl Street, but also has the address of 122 and has the Southern Finance in there now. The building was for sale for a little bit. Apparently there is a transaction that they're changing ownership there. Of course, we own the building at 118, the old stone building that's just before it. So they're looking to do a renovation. They have some plans for that. And from time to time, we get these requests, of course, before us for the income tax credit for these historic structures that been partially abandoned. In this case, they're counting floors, the upper floor, which there's nothing in, and also in the basement. And so it Frankie has to certify it, and then council certifies it, that it's for the state purposes, that it is, qualifies under the statute. So in this case, it does, and so we're requesting y'all's consideration to this.
Thank you. I guess, so the building can be partially occupied, but still, be allowed to have the code, the
1/3. 66%, unoccupied.
unoccupied?
That upper floor in the basement qualifies for
I
that.
didn't know it had a basement. Any, Ms. Roberts?
Help me out here, clarification. There are two properties, and you mentioned just that one property. Where's the other?
Two addresses. It's one building, and it gives 120 is the bottom floor and 122 is the top floor, but it's a single building.
I actually did a map search, and it was showing a separate building, but I'm clear now.
It's
And we're,
I had to walk down there and look at it.
yeah, the stone building, the city's stone building is 118, so just for it.
Any other questions?
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve this.
I have a first by Mr. Harbin. Pro Tem. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Our fourth item is request consideration of a resolution for allocation of American Rescue Plan funds allocation. Ms. McEwen.
Big allocation. A lot of consideration was provided to this from staff. We've been working on it well over 6 months. The American Rescue Plan was passed in March of 2021, which allocated funds to the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. We were one of the cities that did qualify for receiving the money directly from the federal government, and we did go ahead and put in for and receive in the bank $7.2 million, and then we have another allocation in June 2022 that will receive the remainder of a total of $14.5 million. There's other cities throughout the state that actually had to go through the state, so the money passes through the state and then actually goes to them. But since we work directly with the federal government with the CDBG funds, with the HUD, we actually received it directly, which has been a benefit for us to be able to move a little bit quicker on drawing down directly and not having to go through another third party. As you know, City Council held a work session on this on January the 6th of 2022 to review detailed allocation of funds among projects. There was very specific, we're talking about a 2,000-page document as an interim ruling from the federal government guiding the allocation of these dollars, with a big focus on infrastructure, and then also premium pay was eligible as well. From our recommendation to the City Council at the work session, we recommended $2.2 million go for premium pay for all city employees. $1.1 million goes for infrastructure for broadband, and then $11.1 million go for infrastructure for utilities, including water, sewer, and stormwater. Each of those projects, and we did go through a lot of those projects, some 12 different projects with you on those. From sewer to stormwater to the broadband, and we provided our best cost estimate at this point in the game that we could provide. But of course, each of those projects will need to be engineered, have preliminary engineering report, and then we would move forward with the project and bring it back before City Council under our procurement code. So we have a path before us, and so. A good bit of work to do on these projects, particularly the infrastructure. We need to get going on them because they do take a lot of time, a lot of engineering. Kind of the construction is the fastest part. But what we're asking council to consider is a resolution, just at this time, allocate them into buckets. So allocating into the bucket of premium pay, infrastructure for broadband, and then infrastructure for the utilities, which includes water, sewer, and stormwater. So it's our recommendation to move forward with this resolution.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, we did have a lengthy work session last week where a lot of questions were asked and recommendations were taken from council to the management team. but I would open it up for any other questions or comments. We're all talked out.
Mayor, I would like to say I am particularly excited about rewarding our employees. They are our greatest resource in this city, and they are well deserved of this. And also, not that any of these are lesser than others, but particularly the employees. And also the fact that our stormwater is underfunded, this allows us to complete a lot of those projects that have been on that list for some time.
That's correct.
This bucket list that we have.
We have a first by Ms. Roberts.
Second.
Second. Any other comments?
I'd just like to thank our management team for putting together these projects for us, because I think it was a great work session with a lot of good projects and their forethought with coming up with this pay scale for our employees. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The resolution passes unanimously.
Get implemented, Mayor.
Which bucket? Premium pay?
Friday.
It's Friday. And a communication went out last week.
City employees.
All city employees. Our next two items are similar, and the first item, item 5, is request consideration of a construction contract for the shared kitchen. Ms. McEwen.
Okay, I'm going to give the mic to Andrew Strickland, our Assistant City Manager. He's been working on this project for us.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Mayor, City Council, what you have before you, these next two items, the first has to do with construction contract, awarding a construction contract. The second has to do with awarding an equipment contract. Both are for the same project. So as you recall, in 2020, the city was awarded grant funding from the United States Department of Agriculture, but then also the Appalachian Regional Commission. Both grants were in the sum of $500,000 each for a total of $1 million in grants. And we said it then, and I'll say it now, receiving $1 million in grant funding, federal grant funding, is remarkable. It allowed us to consider, and it allows us today to recommend approval and award of this contract to construct what will hopefully be a very important piece of the City of Anderson's entrepreneurship culture that we've built over the years, that will allow small business owners, small restaurant owners that currently fall within the bounds of the state's cottage food industry law. That's capped at $14,000 a year. That can be produced from your home. A lot of these folks we have throughout the city of Anderson just essentially either have to go under the radar to produce more to support their families, or they comply with the law and stop earlier than they really need to. So what this kitchen will hopefully do is allow those folks a cheap alternative, inexpensive alternative, to rather than building their own commercial kitchen, which I'm about to show you is over $1 million, could be, to rent hourly space within an existing kitchen to reduce that cost and provide a service to our community. One of the goals that was set early on with this project was that it would really increase the food culture, the restaurant culture in Anderson. We've had a lot of wonderful entrepreneurs in the past and investors in the past that have kind of walked out on a limb to open a restaurant. This kitchen would give them the ability to train their staff, potentially at some point have kind of a ready-made pipeline of good trained staff at their disposal that have come through this kitchen with educational opportunities, training opportunities. We're also going to partner with the state on as well. So I've also put in front of you the latest design, the latest floor plan for this kitchen. And I'll run through it real quickly with you because I realize it's been a while since you guys have seen this. So what you see, this is the roughly 2,500 square feet of space at the end on Murray Avenue, at the end of our parking garage there in Whitner. This is adjacent to to that common driveway to the back of the properties on Whitner and Main Street there. This includes a small retail space, retail and consult space at the front of the building, 2 kitchens, two full DHEC regulated kitchens, a dishwashing space, a prep bottling labeling area, cooler and freezer space towards the rear, and a small office and storage area for our kitchen manager. So again, very exciting project, the city, very time-consuming process to get here. I will add, as expected, using federal money has some strings attached for sure. So without further ado, on the construction side of things, the city had received 3 bids for that construction. J.M. Cope from Greenville, Laser Construction from Anderson, and John Scott from Greenville also. The 2 lowest bidders, John Scott Construction and Laser Construction, were determined by our architects, DP3, to be non-responsive. They either left some materials out of their bid documents, or so they were either incomplete or they had some incorrect math. So J.M. Cope became the low bidder when those 2 defaulted. So we are recommending that we award the construction contract to J.M. Cope in the amount of $1,081,675. Now that is $287,000 over what was initially budgeted, but we have accounted for that, and we have that money available. Those two grants, USDA and ARC grants, are reimbursement grants, so the city would have to cover those costs initially anyway and apply for reimbursement, but we can cover those costs.
I'll add to Mayor and Council that J.M. Cope is the contractor on the Phase 3 recreation project right now. That's going really well. We've enjoyed our relationship with J.M. Cope.
Yeah, and you know, some might say that the omissions from the bid documents for the other 2 companies were minor. For a federal procurement contract, it's really important that all the documentation is done well. J.M. Cope has been outstanding so far, and so we have no doubt that they're going to do a really good job on this project.
Thank you. Could you talk about the space itself? Did we have any help in designing it outside of DP3?
Yeah, so we had really great process, and thank you, Mayor, for reminding me of that. You know, we had, at y'all's insistence, we had a group of existing restaurant owners and restaurant staff, folks who currently fall under the cottage food law, folks who have food trucks. We kind of considered them industry experts, and they helped advise us on this space and what it needed to look like, the types of equipment it needed to have, how it was organized. So what you see here is a culmination of a lengthy process, of an iterative process that I think initially anytime you bring folks from the community in, you're kind of afraid of what they're going to say. But I have no hesitation in saying we have a much better product today because of that group of people that helped us design this.
Good, thanks. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Stewart?
In all due respect, Mr. Assistant City Manager, I had spoken with some restaurant people who, not just a food truck owner, because again, when you're running a food truck, your environment in a food truck is a lot different than running a bigger kitchen. And I don't know if y'all made the adjustments, but I know at some point there was some questions that had came back with some of our bigger, I guess, restaurant owners with the space and how we had it confined and just the workability along those guidelines. Just want to make sure that hearing from those people who are running the larger restaurants, because they kind of know how a bigger kitchen should be set up, and did we take an account from what they're saying for and their comments and make those suggestions here? And
no, absolutely we did. No, that's what I meant when I said we involved those folks and listened to their comments. So one of the big items, you mentioned food trucks, is we heard an overwhelming need for a local space where you can dump a grease trap, because Part of the issue with food trucks has historically been the need for a commissary kitchen. DHEC requires a commissary kitchen. So what food truck owners have had to do is partner with a local restaurant or a catering kitchen to kind of use their space in off hours if they can, if the restaurant will allow it, to prep foods, to dump their grease traps, and then to park their food truck. And so what we were able to do, initially it wasn't part of the scope for the project, but those discussions led to us including a dedicated grease trap, both for folks who use the inside kitchen, but also for food trucks to potentially dump into as part of the kitchen.
Remember right, I think initially we had two kitchens that looked similar to each other. And I think just through the comments of some of the local restaurants, I think that's where Kitchen B came in, right, with the bacon.
Exactly right. So initially we had two identical kitchens. Both were considered full kitchens, you know, they had fryers, they had vent hoods, they had the same equipment essentially, just times two. But through those discussions, we realized that the importance of having two of those types of kitchens really wasn't there. So we have one full kitchen that'll allow frying primarily for caterers. We heard a lot of caterers, and even you know, Sullivan's, for example. You know, they dedicate a lot of space to their catering. They've actually talked to us about potentially leasing this space to use for catering, and kind of augment the functionality they have currently. And then, you know, a lot of the users we have in the community, and again, this is us being responsive to the community. We're more on the baker, sauce, or bakery, sauce, jams, jellies end of things, canning, preserving. And so, you know, they didn't really need a full kitchen. They needed a kind of a baking kitchen. It's really simple, doesn't have the same equipment, has more mixers, has more ovens, that sort of thing. So, no, that helped us kind of tailor what this kitchen space looks like. Thank you, that was good.
Mr. McLean, typically when we have bid openings, and I know, for instance, like laser construction, if they met all the criteria and they just don't have their certificate of insurance or they didn't include it, that's the only thing they didn't include, will we not say, hey, we've got your bids, but before we award it, you got to provide us with this document, and did we give them reasonable chance as the low bidder at that time to come back with just this one? In my opinion, I think certificate of insurance is just a minor document. And
I don't know what the circumstances were. I think it said that this federal procurement is more strict than that. When I think it's within your prerogative to deny any bid that doesn't comply with what you asked for.
you didn't give them a chance to get the certificate of insurance? Is that something?
So the federal procurement process is very strict, and we are being guided through this process by DP3 architects also. And so they have to certify, they have to certify that all the bids were received appropriately, that the bidders included all the documents that were required. One of the issues that because we brought up that same question, is, that takes away from J.M. Cope, who went the extra mile to make sure that all the information that was required was actually included. So,
Small oversight. I'm not playing.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I just know that in the past with maybe city contracts or whatever, if somebody has something, we make sure they have it, and before we actually award it, and if they can't produce it, then we go to the next bidder. And I don't know, you telling me it's federal law that we have to reject it. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, ARC and USDA guided us the whole way, and they were very adamant that we have the ability here to throw them away, to essentially toss that bid out.
And that's consistent with all the other CDBG or other funding federal projects that we've had in the past that I've dealt with through the Appalachian Council of Governments or Savannah Council of Governments, very specific to the checklist, and if you either have all of it or you don't have all of it. Also, we do recommend J.M. Cope anyways in this instance over laser construction.
You said what now? What's
I would also recommend J.M. Cope over laser construction from previous history with the city.
we always try to keep, work local. That's, and laser is from Anderson. That's the only reason I was asking.
I can
Ms.
say
Roberts.
one word. to describe the situation here, and it's unfortunate. I mean, they didn't complete the bid package. And I'm not saying this is the case, but what if they're uninsurable? I don't think that's the case, but that could be a situation where they didn't provide it, a company didn't provide it because maybe they're uninsurable.
Yep.
So it's unfortunate.
Any other questions? Comments?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve J.M. Cope for the construction project.
Have a first by Mr. Harvey, second by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion?
Question. I know as you mentioned that we're a couple $100,000 over our budget, and you contribute that to the nature of what we're going through right now with COVID and short of supplies and everything being driven. Is that why?
Oh, absolutely.
Anything else? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Very exciting. Looking forward to helping small businesses and hopefully incubating people out of that space where they can contribute in a brick and mortar fashion. Our next item is request consideration to purchase equipment for the shared kitchen. Mr. McEwen?
Again, this is part of the project as well. This is just the equipment piece, and also the USDA funding for this. Mr. Strickland will go over this for us.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Mayor, this is the equipment part of the award package tonight. USDA, just to make better use of both the grants and the different USDA requirements versus ARC requirements, we were advised to kind of split these into two buckets, one being construction for ARC that y'all just approved, and then this with USDA being the equipment piece. Again, sent this out competitively and received 3 bids. The lowest bidder, again, was similar to the construction project, was determined to be non-responsive, and that was Culinary Depot of Columbia. The next bidder, the next lowest bidder, Innovative Food Service Group from Greenville, is who we are recommending awarding the equipment contract to.
Thank you. Any questions or any comments in regards to the equipment part of the shared kitchen? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve? I have a first by Mayor Pro Tem. Second by Mr. Roberts. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously.
And this gets this project going. So it's been a lot of paperwork with the grants, but $1 million worth of federal grants being awarded separately, $500,000 each, both competitively, was a really big win for the city. So looking forward to this space for the community. Thank you, Mayor.
What's the timeline, if I might ask?
We're gonna get them to move really quickly on this. Their project managers in town working on our existing project out at the rec complex. The contract time is 6 months. That could change depending on lead times for materials and equipment, but we're going to hold pretty close to that 6 months. So hopefully this summer we'll have it open and running.
Do we have, the equipment, we had budgeted 500, I guess, and it's 531. And so that additional money is coming from where? The general fund?
Well, that was right on target with the initial budget. So we had them combined in the initial project budget. So that was right on track with. But yes, it'll come from.
So overall, that $1 million, we wound up spending about 1.4 or 5 million, 6 million, about $400,000 over.
Yeah, it's going to end up being 1.6. All said and done.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a first by Mr. Newton, second by Mr. Jeff Roberts. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.